podcast dedicated to the music, movies, and culture of Generation X.
What is up, Slackers? And welcome back to another episode of the Stuck in the Middle podcast. And after last week's anniversary show, this week I'm getting back to basics. So this week, I was talking to my wife, and I was kind of amazed at just how time flies, which is a recurring theme on, this podcast, but also in our everyday lives as Gen Xers. Things seem to get further and further in the rearview mirror. We're having a conversation, so we are coming up on our 20th wedding anniversary. And then that struck me like, wait a minute. If we're coming up on 20-year wedding anniversary, the 90s, I knew they were 30 years ago because I had my, we had the reunion special with Carlos and I, and it really hit me like how long ago that is. And it was also the last year for me as a teenager. 1993, I turned 19 years old. I was also around this time, and I mentioned it, I think, in one of the podcasts, maybe even last week. Sorry, it's all been a blur. Just busy constantly. But I was, thrown out of the house. Now, I talk about this because I remember what my stepfather said to me. He said, I didn't throw you out of the house. You threw you out of the house. Fair enough. Absolutely fair enough. And as a parent, now I look at it and I go, oh my gosh, I was such a little prick. And it just puts it all in perspective. So I'm 19, I'm out of the house on my own. And I say unceremoniously, I was allowed to, get one of my friends' pickup trucks and pack up all my stuff and head out into the world. And I was staying in an apartment that was, my roommate was awesome, like absolutely awesome. And I say roommate, I mean more like guy who let me live in his house for like no money, like honestly, like really cool guy. But I also met him under some odd circumstances, which I'm not even going to get into on the podcast. But it struck me as I was looking through the lists of songs that were on the Billboard Top 200, as well as looking at the movies of 1993. So this is, like I said, a back to basics. Just going to go through the charts. We're going to look at the top 100 singles of 93, not all of them. And, the big box office winners for 1993. So the first half of the year, I lived at home, and I was still playing in bands at the time, and I didn't even realize that until I looked at a couple of songs that were, on the charts. Now, I say in the bands, I mean with Justin and Don, like that crew of folks. So I was in, other bands with other people, but like that was like my core group going all the way back to middle school. And a couple of the songs that are on these charts, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was 93. It blew my mind a little bit when you kind of see it all come into clear picture. But there's also just a weird time. So I think that the fact that I was kind of off in this other world and, not really totally settled with a firm home base, let's put it that way. I don't know that I was as engaged with pop music because there's a lot of stuff on here that I can say I don't remember. So I pulled up the list and I started just hitting a couple of songs. I'm like, okay, I don't remember that one. And just listening to it, some of them don't ring a bell at all. But let's get started. Let's just go through. And we're going to start at number 100. And this is, I think, based upon a couple of the bands that are on here, probably the very end of the bands that would be lumped in, rightly or wrongly, with the hair bands. Now, at least one of them, we've talked about the band on the podcast before, were kind of a resurgent act. So it was kind of their comeback as part of the hair band era. but they in and of themselves came before that. So here we have number 100. We have Two Steps Behind by Def Leppard. And I think that's probably pretty close to the last time, they were really big on the charts. Maybe one more album. So let's take a look. So for singles, wow. They had, no other top 10 hits in the 90s. So the whole thing with this Billboard, top chart, like end of year chart, I think it comes down to sales and not necessarily chart position. So these are the top selling singles, the top singles of the year by sales. Because when I look here, oh, wow, it did. This was a top 10 hit. No kidding. So Two Steps Behind in 1993 was, it was number 12 on the main chart, and it was number 5 on the U.S. rock charts. But I think that was, that's the highest. They had another song in 96 that made the rock chart called Work It Out. I have no idea, like that era. 1999, no kidding. Okay, this is going to end up turning into a Def Leppard, episode if I don't stop. So anyway, we have Two Steps Behind by Def Leppard, 1993. That was their big hit of the year. So then you have artists on here like Taylor Dayne, Can't Get Enough of Your Love. I can't really place the song. I always think of Taylor Dayne as Tell It to My Heart. That's the one that comes to mind. We have number 97. I don't remember the song. Again, it's Anniversary, but I love the band name. Legendary. Tony. I forget what their big hit was. What was their big hit? Feels Good. That's right. Feels Good. That's a good one. I like that song. But again, what a weird mix of songs. So now this next section, I know these songs really well. And I have a story or two about a couple of them. So next we have at 96, If I Ever Lose My Faith in You by Sting. Now this is, what do they call it? Adult contemporary era Sting. Like any link to the punk or new wave Sting is long gone. Now he's Mr. Tantra, he's Mr. New Age, and I think the songs bear that out. They tend to be very mid-paced, and this is probably one of the more upbeat ones. But this era of Sting is definitely adult contemporary. Followed by a band that I saw in concert last summer as part of a triple bill with Toad the Wet Sprocket and the Bare Naked Ladies. I'm talking about the Gin Blossoms. And here they are at number 95 with Hey Jealousy. Kind of an interesting band. Hey Jealousy made it to, so let's see, first top 40 single, reaching number 25. So yeah, it's got to be all about sales for these end of year because it didn't make it into the top 10 officially. But top 25, good enough for the Gin Blossoms. So now we have the band that is the throwback, the classic rock band who had their resurgence with the hair bands. And I'm talking about Aerosmith and Living on the Edge. And this is from the Get a Grip album. I don't think I've ever listened to this album in its entirety at all. It's a weird middle ground for them. So again, like Sting, they turn into a different band as far as I'm concerned. Less rock and roll. I don't want to say rock and roll. Less rockin', more roll. A little bit more leaning into the bluesy pop kind of thing, which was really great for them. But I think of songs like, Living on the Edge and another song that's here on the charts. And then, of course, I rip it all the time. But the song from Armageddon, Don't Want to Miss a Thing, like ballad era Aerosmith, like they've always had it. I mean, obviously, Dream On is one of the greatest songs of all time. Definitely more of a ballad. But yeah, Living on the Edge. I just remember like the music video with Steven Tyler. He's got all the face paint on, and I don't even know what's going on in it. But right off the bat, you have kind of this interesting mix of characters, which I think is always one of the cool things about doing these chart listings. Next, actually, these next two remind me of Strawberries Records and Tapes. So Carlos will remember this. We had a couple of friends who worked there, and we would stay there after hours. But they also would get all this promotional stuff. So part of the reason that I had mentioned that the wall in my bedroom was covered with band stuff was because of the stuff that I got that were all promo things from Strawberries Records. So I remember these next two, which couldn't be more different just as far as pure like promo stuff. And that is Three Little Pigs by Green Jelly and Nothing My Love Can't Fix by Joey Lawrence. So first, Green Jelly. So anyone who doesn't know, this is really just like one guy. God, what's his name? Bill Manspeaker. And he had kind of a rotating cast of band members. Guys like Danny Carey and Maynard James Keenan, who you would probably know from Tool. Such a weird thing, but the music videos, I think, were the ones that were well known. And like the Three Little Pigs one was all claymation, and it's like, as it says here, pot smoking pigs, an appearance by Rambo, and a Harley Davidson riding wolf. The video was number 17 for most of the summer of 1993 in the U.S. and received both an MTV Music Award and a Billboard Music Award nomination. What a weird thing. But yeah, they had a bunch of promo stuff, and I feel like they would play that song all the time at Strawberries. So then you have Joey Lawrence, who, of course, at this time is a huge TV sitcom star, being, Joey. I feel like every character he's ever had is Joey on Blossom with Mayim Bialik. And this was his big record. And, honestly, I look back and he encompassed a stylistic point that was one foot in the teen heartthrob stuff, but enough like vests and flannels and ripped jeans and the long hair to be like this cheesy version of what like the grunge style was. You know what I mean? But it was all very teen heartthrob, and the song itself is a bit of an earworm. Nothing My Love Can't Fix is to Joey Lawrence what How Do I Deal With You by Jennifer Love Hewitt. Like those two songs should be like a back-to-back, like an A and a B side and a single. Just very strange. But you know what? All the power to Joey Lawrence, and why not market him at that time? It made perfect sense. Why not capitalize on, major fame? So next, this is an era for Tears for Fears. I don't really remember this song. Break it down again. We have Reason to Believe by Rod Stewart. Faithful by Go West. I remember that. So then it gets, I'm going to jump a little bit here, number 86. And it didn't dawn on me until I glanced through the chart that a particular landmark, like groundbreaking hip-hop album came out in 1993. It didn't resonate with me until I was reading it, but we'll get to that a little later. But a former group member of that artist is here at number 86, Ice Cube with Check Yourself Before You Riggedy Wreck Yourself. Now, I think this is around the time, and if I remember correctly, in 93, he might have started or embarked upon his acting career. So he had done Boys in the Hood in 91, where he was kind of a supporting cast character, right? This is the one I was thinking of. So that was 92. Okay, so in 92, it was Ice-T and Ice Cube with Bill Paxton in Trespass. I saw that movie in the movie theater. I don't even remember who I went with. Might have been Carlos, might have been someone else. But anyway, Ice-T, Ice Cube, 92. And then in 95, He did The Glass Shield, and he did Higher Learning. But he did decline the role in John Singleton's Poetic Justice, which ended up being Janet Jackson opposite Tupac Shakur instead. Criss Cross is still on the charts here. This is with All Right. Don't really remember that one. En Vogue is on here. En Vogue with Give It Up, Turn It Loose. We have a Michael Bolton sighting with To Love Somebody. I don't know if you remember this one. Digable Planets with The Rebirth of Slick. Cool Like That. It's a good one. But then another little bit of a, I don't know, it just hits my brain in such an interesting way how some of these things seem like they're from different eras. But here they are all together. So a good friend of mine once said that this song in particular, was the swan song for the saxophone solos of the 90s, right? So 80s, you had, 70s and 80s, you would have regular saxophone solos. And my buddy, who was a huge, Bruce Springsteen fan, you had Clarence Clemens playing the sax, like just an integral part of the musicianship. But then it got a little bit cheesy and a little bit overwrought with like the saxophone solo, particularly like taking the place of the guitar solo. So this song may have been the death knell for the saxophone solo, and that is the Jamie Walters led The Heights with, of course, How Do You Talk to an Angel? Now, I got to tell you, Jamie Walters was coming off that run on 90210, where he was a very bad man, if I remember correctly. His character was. But this song was nominated for an Emmy Award for Outstanding Individual Achievement in Music and Lyrics. But the Emmy went to the song Sorry I Asked by Candor and Ebb from the Liza Minnelli Live from Radio City Music Hall. Random. No follow-up singles under the Heights name were ever released. Walters, the lead singer on the single and lead actor on the show, later had a number 16 Hot 100 single with Hold On in 1994. It was his only subsequent chart appearance. But yeah, The Heights, it was a TV show about a band called the Sin City Sinners. Wow. Really? Anyway. The Heights had a hit single. How Do You Talk to an Angel? So then you have, It Was a Good Day by Ice Cube. So Ice Cube hitting on all cylinders here. We have, DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Slapping Prince of Bel Air, with Boom, Shake the Room. Can't say I remember that one. You have Janet Jackson with Again. She's on here a few times. And then just John Cicada, Boom, Boom, Boom. Whole bunch of John Cicada right here in the middle of the charts. And then you have a legendary song. Legendary. Because it was a theme song from a TV show. And I'm talking about the group Inner Circle and their hit, Bad Boys, What You Gonna Do? Here at number 69 for the Hot 100 singles in 1993. Interesting. This is an era of Madonna I'm not super familiar with, Deeper and Deeper and Rain. But then again, bam, let's go in a different direction. So obviously we're starting to see, I think more than ever, the rise of hip hop as a major force in music. Now, it's already been going on for a couple of years now, but I think that this particular listing of artists that I'm going to mention have now started to hit their artistic peak. So here we have at number 65, Insane in the Brain by Cypress Hill. Now, I have mentioned many times, I am unapologetically a fan of Cypress Hill, specifically their first couple of albums, just top-notch stuff. But Insane in the Brain, Insane in the Membrane, Insane in the Brain. Good stuff. Be Real's voice is like no other. Really, just he sounds like no one else. And Sendog, like the way that obviously Be Real's voice is kind of whiny, right? And Sendog has a huh in his voice. Just a perfect, trade-off. Like the way that they play off each other is just absolutely phenomenal. Let's see. Oh, I forgot about that. Interesting. I did not realize that Be Real was not an original member. Huh. Really interesting. I did not know that. Cool. Anyway, then another member was, DJ Muggs, who what's kind of interesting is I mentioned that I went and saw Cypress Hill was the headliner. So it was Cypress Hill, Rage Against the Machine, Funk Dubious, and 7 Year Bitch. And DJ Muggs, of course, did House of Pain, Funk Dubious. He did some remixes for U2, Janet Jackson, Simply Red, Depeche Mode. Anyway, but as part of Cypress Hill, he received 3 Grammy nominations for Insane in the Brain, I Ain't Going Out Like That, and Throw Your Set in the Air. But I love some Cypress Hill. Let's see. So then we have... Okay, so again, I have mentioned this as well. I have this real soft spot in my heart for TLC. And it was because of another artist that I listened to that said, if you don't recognize how good they are, you have a bias either against like pop music or this era of pop and R&B, a little bit of new jack swing, because you have, the rap piece that's, in there as well, because you had, Left Eye who would be rapping, and T-Boz and Chili would be actually singing. But here we have TLC with What About Your Friends? Great song. Just, I love TLC. I know. I could have on the same playlist Mr. Bungle and TLC. Next we have Ugly Kid Joe with their cover of Cats in the Cradle. Cats in the Cradle, which, Harry Chapin, who was taken far too soon in a terrible accident. He had been touring and stuff, and he had fallen asleep while driving, and his car drifted under a tractor trailer. But he had a couple good songs, but I think Cats in the Cradle was really his big one. And Ugly Kid Joe did a really fine version of it. I think that, I was going to call him Maynard, Whitfield Crane. He's a good singer. He has an interesting tone, but he has a couple of vocal performances on a couple of their albums that are really, really good. And if you haven't heard it before, I recommend listening to the song Busy Bee by Ugly Kid Joe. I think that may be his finest vocal performance. Really good song, so I recommend you check that out. And next we have Ballad Aerosmith with Crying. Oh, gosh. We have Real Love by Mary J. Blige. Mary J. Blige always kills it. Just a vibe that you can't replace. I mean, she is just a force. You got to love Mary J. Blige. And then another band that, as I mentioned earlier, lumped into the hair bands. And I think that based upon their musical stylings and how they evolved and expanded and continued to make music, I can't really classify them purely as a hair band, although that's certainly their foundation. And that's Bon Jovi with Bed of Roses. I'm sorry, this is a kick-ass song. Like the harmonies from Richie and John are always amazing, but this is a really great vocal performance. I really like it. Just the piano, it's a top-notch tune by Bon Jovi. So again, it's just like, wait a minute. So now we have Tupac with I Get Around. It's like, what? Tupac's on this list. It's just, this is an interesting time of music. Like some of the stuff I either don't know at all or is like deeply ingrained in my memory. It's very strange. Brian McKnight, who I mentioned, I think a couple episodes ago, that I met at Urban Outfitters, which is kind of cool. Here we have Dr. Dre again with Dre Day. we have Prince in his new power generation era, which was a mixed era for me, but definitely some killer tunes during that time. And here is just a couple of purely like if you want to, I need you to make me a mix CD, a playlist, whatever you want to call it, of 90s music. I would have to put these next two songs on there. All That She Wants by Ace of Base at number 51, and What's Up by Four Non-Blondes at 50. Can either one of those songs just screams, just absolutely screams 90s. It really does. Now, what's curious is that record came out in 92. Because the reason that this just kind of made my memory kind of shift a little bit is that sometimes I think of things in terms of who I was dating at a particular time. So I'm surprised that this was 93. I would have put this at like 91. But no, it's 93. Michael Jackson, Will You Be There? Naughty by Nature. Hip Hop Hooray. Ho, hey. Love some Tretch, man. Hip Hop Hooray, some OPP, good stuff. Kind of underrated as well. Really underrated. So here's an interesting one, and I don't want to say it. So I'm going to come back to number 44 later on in the chart because it's a weird phenomenon, and I don't fully know the backstory. I was doing a little bit of research for it, but I couldn't get a clear explanation, and I didn't want to watch one of those, YouTube videos where they're going to have way too much exposition, and I'm going to be like, just get to the point. What is it all about? And some of you might be listening to me on any given day and be like, yeah, let's get to it. What is the point? So what the point is next on the chart, number 43, is PM Dawn, I Die Without You. Now, this is not the jam for me when it comes to PM Dawn. Okay? So to me, Set Adrift on Memory Bliss, right? So I think the sample is a Spandau Ballet. I just want to make sure. True. I'm not going to do it now because I can't do that whole. Anyway. So PM Dawn, they use that for Set Adrift. But this, here they are with I Die Without You. Tina Turner, I Don't Want to Fight. But now it's one of my all-time favorite bands. I've mentioned how I did a talent show doing one of their songs, but that was like their peak era, right? So the 80s. This is a band that was firmly considered an 80s band, particularly early to mid 80s. And then like the whole rock thing kind of pushed away things that were definitely real musicians, but playing pop, which was very new wave and all that. But Duran Duran had their kind of big comeback. Now, really, they hadn't been gone that long, but it was enough to be out of the public eye to really be able to reintroduce themselves with a couple of big songs. Now, Come Undone is not the one that I would consider my favorite from this era. We'll get to that one in just a minute. We have Whitney Houston with I'm Every Woman. PM Dawn is here again with Looking Through Patient Eyes. Oh. Onyx with Slam. Oh, Slam. Let the boys be boys. That's when the whole grime hit the scene. Grimy. Everybody wants to be grimy. Love that era. I do. And Onyx with Biohazard, I maintain. I will always absolutely sign and co-sign on the Judgment Night soundtrack. I don't care what anyone says. It's a banger. But Onyx is here with Slam. So get this. Guess what's next? Strange Bedfellows, when you look at the year-end charts. And they're not genre-specific charts. It's just the overall chart. Because you go from 37, Slam by Onyx, to number 36, I'd Do Anything for Love, but I Won't Do That, by Meatloaf. Also kind of coming back in a huge way. Because he had been out of the public eye. And this was Bad Out of the Hell too, which was like a huge thing. Like, hey, Meatloaf's doing another record. What's he doing? Bat Out of Hell too. So my brain works in pop culture ways. So I may have even said this on the podcast before, but I always have Bryan Adams, my least favorite song, like probably ever. But you know it's true. Everything I do it for you. But I won't do that. That's how I always hear it. It's Bryan Adams and Meatloaf together every single time. So now at number 34, this is the song that probably more than anything on the chart is pretty close to the one that I really not only was listening to at this time, but I bought the single. And that's Ordinary World by Duran Duran. That song was their comeback. It's so good. It holds up. It still gets radio play, according to my kids. Like, that's the one they know probably more than anything else. So when they were on New Year's Eve, my kids knew that song. Like, oh, yeah, this is great. We love that song. They love the whole set, though. Have I Told You Lately by Rod Stewart. We have Arrested Development here with Mr. Wendell. So this is, I think, a year, maybe two removed from when they first burst onto the scene with Tennessee. And I saw them in concert with 10,000 Maniacs. What an interesting bill. I Have Nothing by Whitney Houston. Whitney's still killing it here. This is the Bodyguard era. Oh my gosh, Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston make a movie. I mean, good grief. I don't think I've ever seen the whole thing. Honestly, I think I've only seen the ending of that movie. So anyone who, I don't want to give you a spoiler 30 years later, but I think he takes a bullet for her. That's what a bodyguard is supposed to do. And Adam Sandler and Damon Wayans, they kind of parodied that a little bit. I forget the name of the movie. But Adam Sandler is in handcuffs and he's like, "You'll always be my bodyguard." That was a fun movie. So here's where I was thinking about the bands that I was in. And this was like a song that I forget who brought it forward, but someone was like, "Hey, I want to do this song." And it's two Princes by the Spin Doctors. And I don't know if it's because someone thought that my voice was right for it, or there's something, rhythmic or something about the musicianship, but for whatever reason, wanted to do the song and we added it in and we would play this song. It was a lot of fun. Oh, I'm going to Be 500 Miles by the Proclaimers. And then, as I said to my son, one of his favorite artists didn't come from me, didn't come from his mom. He just loves Billy Joel with River of Dreams. Now, one that his mom does love at number 22 is Soul Asylum with Runaway Train. Soul Asylum is, again, one of those bands that went from being firmly kind of underground, one foot in punk, and then moving out into like the acoustic, I kind of look at Soul Asylum as a more favorable, in my opinion, a more favorable version of the Goo Goo Dolls. Bands that started out in punk scenes and then went to this kind of acoustic rock. But Runaway Train was off of, what album is that? Grave Dancers Union. Was that the same? No. Hold on a second. Let's see. Yeah, that's what I thought. Oh, wow, that's the same album? Because Somebody to Shove is such a kick-ass tune. That's on the same album. Wow. I guess maybe I have to listen to the whole album. I don't think that I ever have. So that's, Grave Dancers Union. Wow. Somebody to Shove's the lead track on there. Somebody to Shove, Black Gold, Runaway Train, Keep It Up, Homesick, Get On Out, New World, April Fool, Without a Trace, Growing Into You, 99%, and The Sun Made. All right, I bite. I'm going to have to listen to that album sometime this week. And I also love the fact that the way they did the album cover, it's like Houses of the Holy from Led Zeppelin. Very cool. All right. I bite Soul Asylum. I'm going to check out the whole album. Vanessa Williams and Brian McKnight with Love Is. Another person returning to the charts after a while. We have Peebo Bryson and Regina Belle with A Whole New World. As you might know, that is from Aladdin, which we'll switch over to movies in just a minute. And then we have just legendary song. And that's Nothing But a G Thing. Now, I'm not going to subject you to the fact that I actually kind of got a compliment from one of my kids who actually says, you got Dre's cadence down. Well, I have worked on the Dre cadence. I love Dr. Dre. Like, the Chronic album is perfect. Just a perfect hip-hop album and such a breakthrough. And Nothing But a G Thing is something I always have on, like, if I'm like during that time period. So, I got married in 2003, right? So, 20 years, and 10 years prior was this. And I had to have Nothing But a G Thing on this mix CD that I made for all the people in my groom party, because it needs to be there. We have Toronto's own Snow with Informer. We have Rex in Effect with Rump Shaker. Mariah Carey with Dream Lover at number 8. Now, I don't remember this artist at all. I vaguely remember the song If I Ever Fall in Love by Shy, but I can't really place it. Sisters with Voices coming in at number 6 with Weak. I don't remember that. Silk with Freak Me. Not ringing a bell. Number 4 is Janet Jackson, That's the Way Love Goes. You listen to the beats on that song, like the programmed drums. It's so 90s. There's something about the production quality and the style at that time that Janet Jackson just absolutely embodies that time period. That's the album Janet, right? And I think the record before that was Rhythm Nation. Yeah, so Rhythm Nation was 89, Janet was 93. I have a soft spot a little bit for Janet Jackson as well, just because, her really good songs are just phenomenal. We have UB40 with Can't Help Falling in Love. And at number 2, so I said, hey, when we're at number 44, now number 44 was Whoot, 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 there it is, by 95 South. However, number 2 is Whoomp, there it is, WHOOMP, Whoomp, there it is, by Tag Team. Other than the choruses, like 2 completely different songs, but the Tag Team one, and the fact that, like, the guys now, like, even if you just go to their Wikipedia page and just look at the picture they have, it's from 2021. These are a couple of dads who are just like, yeah, we were in this, like, pop rap group, and we had a number, like, let's see, it went to number 1 on the Billboard Hot R&B and number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart in 1993. Like, it's just amazing. I might even add the picture when I put the stuff out for the podcast, because it's so good. And then finally, and I don't think any surprise, we have Whitney Houston with her cover rendition of I Will Always Love You from the Bodyguard soundtrack. So let's see. I Will Always Love You was originally recorded by, of course, Dolly Parton, but then Linda Ronstadt did a version as well. But this also won a Grammy Award for Record of the Year and Best Female Pop Vocal Performance. I mean, it is so heartbreaking to know kind of the trajectory of Whitney, because she came from an entertainment family, a good entertainment family that had reached some, some pretty strong heights, but honestly, like drugs will take you down such a path. I know that Bobby Brown has many times talked about feeling guilty about exposing her to some of the things. Yeah, I mean, Whitney Houston died at age 48. 48. That's the year, that's how old I am right now. I'll be 49 in the summer. It's just absolutely awful. You know, she was active from 1977. So basically, she got started when she was 14 years old. So from 14 until 48, she was in the public eye. And yeah, the scourge of addiction. And, you know, I mentioned that a little bit last week from my own experiences. It will never lead to a good place. And it's just a heartbreaker to think that, you know, she still had so many years left. But anyway, enough of that. So that is the Billboard year-end Hot 100 singles of 1993. So we are 40 minutes in, almost 41 minutes in. Let's hop over to, I'm just going to go with the highest grossing films of 1993. And what's interesting is a couple of actors who are on the charts multiple times, but also the people that I guess, didn't expect would still be like really killing it. But here they are. So number 10 so again, this is a different time, right? Adjust for inflation. At 78 million, we have A Few Good Men. Of course, Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson, Demi Moore, Kevin Bacon, Kevin Pollak, James Marshall, J.T. Walsh, and Kiefer Sutherland. I saw it in the movie theater. Great freaking movie. You know, directed by Rob Reiner. Like, excellent. And it deserved all of the credit that it got. It's a great movie, and I think it holds up. Did we watch that recently? I don't know. I can't remember, and I can't handle the truth. Next, we have 84 million. We have Cliffhanger, directed by Rennie Harlin, who I think is oftentimes known for being the ex-husband of Gina Davis. Sylvester Stallone, John Lithgow, Michael Rooker, Janine Turner, Paul Winfield, and Ralph Waite. This is just one of those eras of Stallone, which is like, hey, let's do Stallone on a mountain. I mean, that's what it came down to. It's like, put Stallone in some circumstance, and he'll carry the picture. I mean, he will. He's Sylvester Stallone. He's Sly. He is the man. So here we are, 93, 84 million. Now, this one, I think I've seen only parts of it. So it's kind of a shame on me. But here we have 102 million. We have In the Line of Fire, Clint Eastwood, John Malkovich, Rene Russo, Dylan McDermott, Gary Cole, Fred Dalton Thompson, and John Mahoney. Directed by Wolfgang Peterson. Now, anyone who doesn't know, Wolfgang Peterson, if I'm remembering correctly, yep, there it is. The Never-Ending Story, Das Boot, Enemy Mine, that's a good movie. In the Line of Fire, Outbreak, Air Force One, The Perfect Storm, Troy, and Poseidon. Guy's a beast. What a cast, though. Clint Eastwood and John Malkovich, sign me up. Oh, number 7. I saw this in the movie theater. I saw this at a drive-in. Indecent Proposal, directed by Adrian Lyne, 107 million. Robert Redford, Demi Moore, Woody Harrelson, Oliver Platt, and Seymour Cassel. So, I've already mentioned Demi Moore once for A Few Good Men. Good year for Demi Moore. Number 6, we have Mrs. Doubtfire, directed by Christopher Columbus, 109 million. Robin Williams, Sally Field, Pierce Brosnan, Harvey Fierstein, and Robert Prosky. So I haven't talked about, well, we'll get to it. You'll know what I mean in just a minute, because the big stars of 93 are people who have had lengthy careers already. Some of them starting as, teens, and others been on TV. It's really curious. So Mrs. Doubtfire at number 6. So number 5, I mentioned Peabo Bryson and Aladdin. Here we are, directed by Ron Clements and John Musker, $119 million, with the voices of Scott Winger, Robin Williams. Here's Robin Williams again. Linda Larkin, Jonathan Freeman, Frank Welker. He does all the voices. Gilbert Gottfried and Douglas Seal. Killer. Number 4, and Aladdin has my all-time, favorite Disney princess. I know I'm like a grown old man. Why do you have a favorite Disney princess? Because Jasmine's the best. Period. Hands down. That's it. That's all there is to it. There is none better. Number 4, a movie that I absolutely cannot stand. I am not a fan of the lead actor, and it just is what it is. Either you love him or hate him, I think, just my opinion. I've seen this only because my mother-in-law loves this movie. And finally, one time, I'm like, fine, I'll just watch it. You're watching it? Fine, I'll watch it. It's fine, but it's just not for me. $127 million. We have Sleepless in Seattle, directed by Nora Ephron, starring Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan, Bill Pullman, Ross Malinger, Rosie O'Donnell, Rita Wilson, and Rob Reiner. It's a nice movie, And I don't know, was that the first one where they were emailing or something? No, that's You've Got Mail. Isn't that also Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks? I don't know. Anyway, Sleepless in Seattle, whatever. Next, number 3 with $158 million, we have The Firm with Tom Cruise, Gene Triplehorn, Gene Hackman, Ed Harris, Holly Hunter, Hal Holbrook, David Strathairn, and Gary Busey. Directed by legendary filmmaker Sidney Pollack. That cast is just brutally good. But yeah, I can't say that I remember it. I know that I've seen it, but it doesn't really ring a bell. But here you have, once again, Tom Hanks. So you have, Tom Cruise. You have Tom Cruise at number 10 with A Few Good Men. You have Tom Cruise at number 3 with The Firm. You have Demi Moore at number 10. You have Demi Moore at number 7. And Robin Williams at 5 and 6. So now we have number 2 with $179 million, directed by Andrew Davis, The Fugitive, starring Harrison Ford, Tommy Lee Jones, Celia Ward, Joe Pantoliano, Andreas Katsoulis, and Jerron Crabb. Crab. So what you may not know is that the script for The Fugitive was written by David Twohy. For anyone who doesn't know who David Twohy is, he is the writer, director of one of my guiltiest of pleasures. It's really not that guilty. I've been rewatching. I've gotten through 1 and 2, but the Pitch Black Chronicles of Riddick, it's just a guilty pleasure. I love it. I've seen 1 or 2 Fast and Furious, so it's not like I'm just this big Vin Diesel guy. I love the character of Riddick, and it's popcorn cinema. It is pulp. It is over the top. It is camp. It is everything I want in a movie. So David Twohy, who wrote The Fugitive, writes and directs The Chronicles of Riddick. And number one is also kind of a game changer because of some members of the cast. So at number 1, we have the Steven Spielberg directed Jurassic Park with $339 million at the box office, starring Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Richard Attenborough, Bob Peck, Martin Ferraro, B.D. Wong, Samuel L. Jackson, and Jeff Goldblum. Wayne Knight, Joseph Mazziello, Ariana Richards. So the reason I pause on Samuel L. Jackson and Jeff Goldblum, I think those two guys are like 1 and 2 or something in like being in like top grossing movies of all time, and continue to be. It is a phenomenal run that somewhat started with Jurassic Park. So Samuel L. Jackson, let's see, his filmography, and I'm going to do a whole episode on Samuel L. Jackson at some point, probably around the same time that I do the Quentin Tarantino episode. That's going to be coming at some point. But let's see the order of this. Yeah, so he had bit roles and things all through, like, you know, his first thing was in the 70s, but then he did a bunch of work with Spike Lee, stuff like that. But then we get to 92. Juice, Patriot Games, White Sands, Fathers and Sons. Then 93. Menace to Society. Oh, that's right. He did the Loaded Weapon 1, which was like a parody. Amos and Andrew with Nick Cage. Jurassic Park. So also in 93, that will get its own episode at some point. True Romance. So also a Tarantino written script. Then Fresh, Pulp Fiction 94, New Age, Hail Caesar, Kiss of Death, Die Hard with a Vengeance. Love that one. As Zeus Carver. Great name. Let's see. A Time to Kill, The Long Kiss Goodnight, Hard 8, Jackie Brown, The Sphere, The Negotiator, Out of Sight. Oh, I like Out of Sight. Of course, he's in Star Wars, Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, Rules of Engagement, remake of Shaft, Unbreakable as Elijah Price, Mr. Glass. Good stuff. But I mean, it goes on and on. Oh, that's right. He's in Triple X. Another Vin Diesel joint that I really, really like. I do. I like Triple X. That's damn good. That is so good. Xander Cage, man. And then the sequel to Triple X was with Ice Cube, for those of you who don't remember. But anyway. And then Jeff Goldblum. He's got Marvel movies and like all the Jurassic Parks and just all the stuff that he's done. That guy. And then he'll like do like small films just because he can. Right? So, I mean, The Fly was 86 and kind of a hit. You know, then he was in Jurassic Park. He was in Powder. That's a weird ass movie. Let's see. Independence Day. Huge hit at the time. Jurassic Park. The Prince of Egypt. He's Aaron. That's, animated. Let's see. Oh, he does, voice work. Then he just does some weirdo stuff. The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. So that was a Wes Anderson joint. I love Wes Anderson. Yeah, I mean, all over the place. And then, like, once again, everything from, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. He's in Thor Ragnarok. Back to Jurassic World Dominion. I mean, holy cow. Those two guys are just like the kings of box office. Some of it is just purely by happenstance. Sometimes they're just supporting cast. Sometimes they're only in a movie for seconds, minutes, and it'll be some scene stealing thing, and then they're gone again. So kudos to Samuel L. Jackson and Mr. Jeff Goldblum. So again, that's Aladdin. I'm sorry, it's number 1, Jurassic Park. Number 2, The Fugitive. Number 3, The Firm. 4, Sleepless in Seattle. 5, Aladdin. 6, Mrs. Doubtfire. 7, Indecent Proposal. 8, In the Line of Fire. 9, Cliffhanger. And 10, A Few Good Men. So, that is the list of both the Billboard year-end Hot 100 singles and the top grossing films of 1993. That is a long time ago at this point. It's pretty amazing, It makes me feel old, as I'm sure it does all of you as well. But at the same time, there are certain comforts that come with watching some of this stuff or listening to some of those songs. It's however the brain chemistry works. And I know there's some, scientific name for it and, which particular hormones or chemicals get released in the brain that allows for us to feel a certain sense of calm or temporary euphoria from hearing a song that we really enjoy from a certain time period of our lives. That's why I like to do the breakdowns of years, because I look at it and I go, oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Or I really liked that. Oh, that song's great. That artist, they were one-hit wonder. I love that song. And just, the movies. Because I think even more so, I think music can get really dated. Like I said, the programmed sounds with the Janet Jackson stuff. It sounds very much of its time, right? But I think a really well-shot film can be timeless and not seem odd or out of place. Now, I'm not talking you go back to something low resolution or black and white. I mean, that's different. But I think a really well-crafted film holds up. I think we sometimes will look at someone, let's use a Few Good Men, and we look at those actors as they are today, right? Because they continue to age just as we do. So you go back and you watch it and you look at it and you go, oh my gosh, that's a young Jack Nicholson. He doesn't look anything like that anymore. He's just a crazy old, Jack Nicholson down in the front row of the Lakers game. But such good stuff. And that was a really killer list of movies with some major, major star power. But there were so many other movies that came out then, and a couple of them are my favorites. And also a couple of tragedies in Hollywood that I'm going to do an episode on next week. So please, let me know. What do you think? What are some of the things that you really enjoyed from that time period? What about some of those groups that I mentioned that I don't remember? Did you love them? Did you hate them? Do you not remember them just like I do? Let me know. How can you let me know? You can email me at stuckinthemiddlepod@yahoo.com. You can reach me on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at StuckPodX. You can head over to the Facebook page, Stuck in the Middle, a Gen X podcast Facebook page. You can leave 5-star reviews, like, comment, share, and most importantly, please subscribe to the podcast. So until next time, later, slackers.